Hello everyone, Happy New Year, and here's a fun fact. I hate computers! Might sound super ironic, but let me tell ya, after I finished watching Do It Yourself, more and more I started to realize just how much I can't stand modern technology. But that anime series is a topic for a different day. Right now, I want to post a W because last year I played Blue Reflection Second Light, which is an awesome game, probably one of my favorites unironically, but that experience came with a caveat. You see, I had the blessing of playing the first game on a PS5, which is the best way you can experience it. It's locked to 60 frames per second, rendered at an upscaled 4K, which honestly made my experience notably better compared to when I was initially playing it on my base PS4. However, Blue Reflection Second Light never got any sort of PS4 Pro enhancement, was never released for the PS5, so you are playing this game practically no differently than if you were to play it on a PS4. I would maybe give it more edge on the loading screens, but that's not even necessarily true. I don't know if it's because of the way the game is coded that it doesn't take very good advantage of the NVMe drive, but for whatever reason, the loading screens were kind of slow. This isn't the only game where I've noticed this. Even Sakura Wars had very similar behaviors where every time there was a loading screen, it honestly did not feel like I was running this on a drive that's supposedly 10 times above the speed of the PS4's hard drive. I don't know what the fuck was up with that. Maybe they used some weird optimization technique for handling the mechanical drives on the older consoles that doesn't translate super well with the PS5's hard drive. I have no idea, but regardless, I thought that buying the PC version would essentially free me of this curse of 30 frames per second on the second game. Now of course, I had an RX 6600 and from the very beginning I never felt that optimistic that I would be able to play this game at 4K, but I was at least expecting somewhat decent 1440p performance with possibly some tweaks that needed to be made in the graphics settings, because after that, all I would need to do is manually add FSR and I would end up getting similar results as I did with the first game. That's what I was hoping would happen. But reality is not as blissfully hopeful as I would like it to be. Now, I've already made a video talking about the way this game performs. I don't feel like repeating myself, but essentially, this game has an issue with GPU underutilization. This is gonna happen regardless of which graphics card, which CPU, and even which operating system you use. In several areas, it will not go above 80-ish% at max settings, and even if you tone down some of the graphics settings, sure, it's gonna give you more frames, but it won't help in increasing the GPU load. At 1080p, I was already struggling to get this to playable status and was forced to apply outside patches and game boosts, and my venture was in fact successful. If I wanted to play this at 1080p with the setup from my previous video, I could get a pretty stable 60 to 75 FPS experience depending on which graphics settings I opted for. But if I wanted to play it at a higher resolution, no chance. Unironically, my best option would be to play this at 1080p and manually add FSR with custom Proton runners to upscale it to 4K, but this game looks like dog shit with FSR 1, so I just didn't even bother. At the end of the day, I reached the conclusion that if I was going to go anywhere with this game, I needed a new GPU. So until then, I was gonna put this game on hold. Well, something funny happened during the holiday season. I got this bad boy in order to complete my recently pieced together PC build. When I first finished my AM5 build, there were a few pieces missing. One was 2 extra RAM sticks, a few additional fans, and the last piece would be a new graphics card. I was using my previous one for my older build, which was the RX 6600, which served its purpose quite well, but I needed something a bit greater. I wanted a card that could better match my ever-growing standardization of a bare minimum 1440p resolution ever since I got a PS5. Now, usually when I bring this up to some of my friends, I'm always asked why I picked an AMD card and not an Nvidia one. The only thing I will say in regards to this is, if I was daily driving Windows, I would probably agree to get an Nvidia card, but I'm a Linux user, so driver compatibility is overwhelmingly on AMD's side. So I got an RX 6900 XT on sale during the holiday month, and at this point my build is pretty much complete. Now, I'd be lying if I said that Blue Reflection Second Light didn't also play a role in influencing my decision to buy this card, and I'd also be double lying if I said that this wasn't the first game I tried testing immediately after I jammed this to my computer. So ultimately, the question becomes, have I reached the promised land? Is Blue Reflection Second Light finally playable at 4K? The answer to that is, yeah, mostly. I mean, assuming that all you're aiming for is a stable 60 FPS experience, then I would say that yes, you can, although there are still some spots where the frame rate will dip to somewhere around 56 to 58 frames. Now, to be honest, this actually isn't that bad considering how it's specific to only a few spots, and I'm currently testing what's probably the most demanding dungeon of the game, at least according to what I've heard. I definitely do need to look into other hardscapes to confirm just how much the frame rate suffers when roaming through those areas, but as far as Kokoro's hardscape, for the most part, it is above 60, although admittedly it wouldn't exactly be super fun to experience dips while walking around, even if it's exclusive to a few spots. Now luckily I actually already know what settings have the biggest impact on the performance, namely the shadow quality, and surprisingly ambient occlusion. I could also tone down the local reflection quality, and after some tweaks I feel like I can get a pretty good experience at 4K. Now with that said, I will share one minor complaint that I have. I really wish this game had other resolutions between 1440p and 4K. For example, I actually feel pretty confident that at 1800p I would get very consistent above 60 FPS at max settings. This is based on a few games that I've tested, and to be frank, I'm not someone who obsessively counts every single pixel rendered on screen. And when I look at 1800p, it honestly doesn't look too different from 4K. 1440p, I can tell the difference, which is why I'm not going with this option. But with 1800p, the gap starts to lower more and more to the point where they almost become indistinguishable. So it's a real shame that they don't have this resolution, especially because I think it would be dope to play this at high settings without worrying about frame rate drops. But I guess I'll have to accept the compromise. Now, since in the past I modified the game to run at ultra wide, I guess I might as well talk about how it plays with this new card. In general, it plays fine. I think if I had to play it this way, I'd be more than satisfied. In the second stage of Kokoro's hardscape, it kind of hovers around 100 FPS. There are definitely some spots that go well below that, so I don't think I'd be able to play this at 120 FPS consistently at max settings. But since my ultra-wide monitor has a refresh rate of 75Hz, this isn't really an issue for me, and I'd be able to get a pretty smooth experience at locked 75 FPS. As of right now, while I've made a pretty big step, my journey is still not quite done. I'm still gonna see if there are other tricks I can pull to optimize my experience, and I still haven't tested other areas besides the school facility and Kokoro's hardscape, so I can't exactly say that I'm done. I'm also gonna dig in a bit more to see if it's possible to brute force the game into displaying it at 1800p. Also, in case you're wondering how's the Windows experience, it's definitely better, but to be honest, the advantage is a lot more noticeable when I don't have the Atelier fix and Feral's game mode enabled. When those two things are preset, the gap isn't strong enough that I would be willing to switch the OS just to play this game. Well, granted, I wouldn't do that even if the gap was that big, but that's a story for another day. Other than that, I think that's all I have to say. Thanks for watching the video.